Maggie Lena Walker. Maggie Lena Mitchell was born in Richmond, Virginia on July 15, 1864. Her mother, Elizabeth, was an assistant cook, her father, Eclius, was a newspaper man, and her stepfather was a butler. Both her father and stepfather worked on the same estate. After the death of her father, Maggie was forced to help around her home. She worked two jobs, one as a delivery woman and one as a babysitter, all while attending segregated public school. And yet she still managed to graduate at the top of her class in 1883. Maggie married Armistead Walker Jr. in 1886. He was a black contractor and a member of her church. She and Armistead went on to have two sons, Russell and Melvin, and she was known to have stayed at home to raise her children while her husband was working. Maggie Walker was active in her community. Mainly, she was an organizer for the Independent Order of St. Luke, which was a fraternal burial society which provided services to the elderly in her community. In 1902, Maggie started a newspaper for the St. Luke organization, which was called the St. Luke Herald. When the St. Luke Herald became a big success, Maggie went on to start the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank and became the first woman in the United States to charter a bank, in addition to being the bank president. The bank later merged with two other banks to form the Consolidated Bank and Trust Company, which is still known to be the oldest black-owned and run bank in the United States. Maggie Lena Walker was also known as an activist for African American and women's rights. She was a well-known member of the National Association of Colored Women, as well as the vice president for the Richmond, Virginia chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP. Maggie Lena Walker devoted her life to stopping racism, sexism, and economic oppression. She chartered a bank, a newspaper, and a store, all 17 years before American women were given the right to vote. She also fostered black entrepreneurialism during the time Jim Crow laws threatened African American progress. In 1923, Maggie was honored with a master's degree at the Virginia Union University. This university was an historically black university in Richmond, Virginia. Maggie remained president of the St. Luke's Bank until her death on December 15, 1934. Maggie overcame many personal tragedies in the course of her life, from being a young child and having her father murdered by a robber, to being a young wife and having one of her sons die in infancy. And then in 1915, her husband was shot and killed by her own son Russell, who mistook him for a prowler. When she opened her bank, the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank, Maggie's goal was to help people in her community obtain loans. By 1920, her bank enabled the purchase of around 600 homes, and by 1924, the St. Luke's organization had 50,000 members with 1,500 local chapters and a staff of 50 people working in the Richmond headquarters. When Maggie Walker published the St. Luke's Herald, her intention was to increase awareness about the St. Luke's organization as well as their activities in their local community. She also had intended to help the organization in their role in educational work in the organization. Maggie Walker's activism in her community was seen in various councils and committees that she participated in, including the Richmond Council of Colored Women, International Council of Women of the Darker Races, the National Association of Wage Earners, and the National Urban League. In 1921, Maggie ran for the seat of Superintendent of Public Instruction. She ran on the Republican ticket, but she, along with all the other black Republican candidates, were defeated. She continued her work with the St. Luke organization and managed to keep her bank, the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank, open through the Great Depression. Maggie Lena Walker was an iconic woman. She paved the way for women business owners. But more importantly, she made huge strides in the fight against African American oppression. She was a beacon of hope to all in her community, as well as all over the United States of America. Maggie's urban mansion located in Richmond, Virginia, served as a social hub and family sanctuary for 4 generations. Her home is now open and is an exhibit which allows patrons to have a view of her personal and professional life. The exhibit includes her belongings and writings, which are still on display. On July 15th of 2017, the Maggie L. Walker Memorial Plaza of Richmond, Virginia was dedicated. This memorial was a milestone for the Richmond community. Taking nearly 4 years to create, this memorial highlights some of the most important accomplishments in Maggie Walker's life. The creation of Maggie's memorial involved public meetings to gain input on what people in the community wanted to see located in the memorial. The project was deemed the public's project, and the entire community of Richmond, Virginia's input steered the development process of Maggie Lena Walker's memorial. Since the dedication, the Maggie L. Walker Memorial Plaza has served as a gathering place for multiple community events, for family outings, for couple rendezvous, as well as a place for quiet reflection. The community of Richmond, Virginia helped create a welcoming public space for any person that would come. In conclusion, this presentation is meant to honor the late Maggie Lena Walker. From her strong work ethic to her invaluable strides for African American and women's rights, Maggie was a source of hope and compassion, even in the darkest of times.